Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Behind the Brand. I'm your host, Brian Elliott. And if you're new here, Behind the Brand is a place to come to learn how to build your brand from some of the smartest people who've already done it. One of the best ways to learn is to model the people who are already doing what you want to do. Take a page from their playbook. Do what they do, but make it your own. In this episode, I talked to Duchscher, who is famous for being the media company behind MrBeast. If you don't know MrBeast, you're probably too old or you're living in a cave somewhere. No problem. But MrBeast is taking over the world. He recently struck a deal with Amazon for the biggest competition series in TV history. The deal is reportedly worth somewhere around $100 billion and will be MrBeast's first attempt to sort of cross over from the internet to more traditional TV entertainment. I think he's going to be wildly successful. This is a fascinating interview with Reed. I think you're going to love it. You'll learn a ton. And here we go.
Yeah, I think there's something new that happens every year. A year and a half ago, I had never thought that customization and arts and crafts was going to be a huge genre on YouTube. And now there's guys like ZHC pulling tens of millions of views per video on customizing Teslas and iPhones and things like that. So that was something that didn't exist to that point. There's a lot of channels in the home renovation space that I've seen blowing up where they're just taking a house and buying it and the channels around the process of renovating that home. There's also channels I've seen where someone is giving you the behind the scenes access to how you can become a farmer, whether that's a milk farm or, someone living in Nebraska. And I've seen some of those channels tick up. So the argument of, hey, YouTube is so oversaturated, it's hard to break through it's false. And it's false because every single year there's new genres that didn't exist prior that are starting to put different creators on the map. And just a few of the ones that I listed, and ZHC being one of the biggest creators in the space, built on a genre of content that didn't exist 3 years ago. He was the only one, and he just had been doing it for 5 years and never caught steam. And then people started paying attention. So YouTube's definitely not a place where you just throw videos and it's oversaturated. I don't think that holds a lot of truth. And even someone like Eric, who we've seen, and this was the thing, he wanted to hit 1 million subs by the end of this year. I think he's incredibly close, but he's took a little different route in how he's become popular, and he's tried to sneak into Logan Paul's boxing event, and he's just like taken popular events and tried to insert himself. And so it's really interesting every year seeing the different types of creators that kind of propel themselves to the top of the platform. And that's not stopping. I think that'll continue to happen. And business is going to be another one of those that's just going to continue to rise.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that, tracking my roots, where I came from.
What's up, everyone? My name is Reed Duchscher, and I am the CEO of Night Media, and you are watching Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hey everyone, what's up? Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Reed, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
Yeah, I guess it was not something I'd planned on doing. I was an NFL sports agent at the time, working with a lot of cool guys, NFL Hall of Famers, Heisman Trophy winners, and I stumbled upon YouTube. And there was this group on YouTube at the time. They only had a couple million subscribers, and that group was Dude Perfect. Now, you guys probably know Dude Perfect went on to have a very successful career and 50 plus million subscribers. But at the time, they were very early on in their career. And I saw a lot of value in these YouTube channels being able to capture a young audience. And so I ended up leaving my job as a sports agent that I had worked so hard to get into to do this thing called Night Media, which is the company I run now. And what we do is we work with a lot of these YouTube channels that aspire to have tens of millions of subscribers and build bigger businesses.
That's awesome. I want to dig into that. Let's go back in the chronology. And let's talk about young Reed. Like, did you have early aspirations going into sports, or like, why did you gravitate that way? And I also want to ask a little bit about your parents. Like, what did they do? And did they kind of steer you in one direction? And the context behind that question is a lot of my audience, and I think this has nothing to do with age, by the way. Sure, some of them, are young up and comers and they're trying to figure out their next move, their career, what they're passionate about. But I think, all of us at some point are trying to kind of reinvent ourselves. And so I want to talk about, these signals that you may have had or where you gravitated to, because I think a lot of people are trying to find their path.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thankfully, my parents didn't really push me in any certain direction. Like they allowed me to have my own experiences, to figure out what I enjoyed in life. At a young age, I fell in love with football. That's all I wanted to do my entire life. I wanted to play high school football. I signed a Division I letter of intent to play at North Dakota State University. And so that was really the path that I was on from a young kid all the way up into college and through college. And so I got involved in sports at a very early age, hyper competitive, played basketball, played baseball, but football was really my true love. And even then, my parents never really pushed me to play football. My dad was an athlete when he was a child. My mom played sports, but it wasn't something that they were like, listen, we want you to play football. Something like, if you play football, we're going to support you. If you don't want to play football, if you want to do something else, if you want to, be in a band, if you want to do this, like we're going to support you. We're here for you. My parents never missed a game in high school. That was on the road, at home. They were as supportive as any parent should be. And so that was one thing that they instilled in me, and hopefully I pass on to my children is, I don't want to push them in any certain direction. I want them to figure out what makes them happy. And so with that football career, and then playing at North Dakota State, I ended up meeting a lot of guys that would go on to play in the NFL and play in the Canadian Football League. And so my next progression after I played college athletics was then to become a sports agent. And I watched the movie Jerry Maguire like every other young kid. And, I wanted to be involved in that world, that like ecosystem of negotiating contracts and dealing with player clubs. And, I not only thought it was a sexy industry, but, my profound love for football actually would then translate into a career. And so a lot of my efforts after I finished graduate school was like, how do I become a sports agent? How can I get involved in that industry? And so that was really my path up from a young kid all the way through college.
What position did you play? I had Hall of Famer Brett Favre on recently. And then before that, probably one of my favorite interviews to date has been Russ Wilson from the Seattle Seahawks. Man, what a baller. These guys are both incredible people, with their own sets of talents.
Yeah, I didn't play quarterback. That was never my skill. Not that I couldn't throw the football. I knew like at a young age, I wasn't going to be able to compete as a quarterback at a high level, like in college. And if I wanted to play further as a professional. And so I had speed. I had really good hands. And so I ended up playing wide receiver. In high school, I rotated between, wide receiver and linebacker because we didn't have that many kids and I was a small high school. So, you play both ways. And then in college, my main focus was wide receiver.
Yeah, I played sports as well. I loved football, baseball. Played a little soccer. Probably should have stuck with soccer. It was like for my height and build, it was probably my best sport. But I played. If you saw the movie Rudy, that was me. Oh, so yeah. I played. I was a little bit more talented than Rudy, but I really resonate with the underdog just because I remember playing scout team offense and defense. And it was a great experience. I think sports can teach you a ton. And I want to maybe unpack that a little bit more about how it's affected your career. Mm-hmm. So where to go from Dude Perfect? Because they've blown up. I mean, they're all over the place. They're doing collabs with Nerf and with every single, really cool brand out there. How did it evolve once you got started with these guys?
Yeah, so one thing that I looked at when I first met Dude Perfect was that they were very heavily focused on basketball and football. Which is fine. Like I totally understand those are the big sports in America, and that was the audience they wanted to focus on. I saw that they had an opportunity to get into smaller niche sports where there was an audience and probably not a lot of young kids paying attention to it, but that they could bring that older audience back in. So one of those was golf. And so the first thing that I did when I started working with Dude Perfect was I started contacting all these golf companies, ended up meeting the CMO of Callaway Golf. And so the first golf video they did was long drive trick shots, I believe, with Jamie Sedlowski, the long drive trick shot or long drive champion. Guy hits the ball like 450 yards. It's insane. And so we ended up inking a deal with Callaway Golf, which then led into a BMW partnership with Golf Digest and so on with the Golf Channel, and like the golf opportunities just kept rolling. And so that was a lot of my main focus, was like, how do we get involved in sports like that aren't necessarily football and basketball? They get to collab with everyone. Like you said, they've done Odell Beckham Jr., they've done Drew Brees. They've had a lot of success. But I think the one thing, that I was proud of is that for a sport like golf, which is predominantly older, has a predominantly older audience, we were able to bring in young kids in a unique way. We did one video with Topps trading cards and another video with, I said earlier, BMW, where we actually played like miniature golf with plastic clubs and everything else, but used it as a way to market the Callaway Golf's new golf ball. And so it was just like kind of turning the golf world upside down and thinking about how do you market towards younger kids to when they potentially will get interested in golf, then they go buy that product. And so that was the main reason that I came in and started helping Dude Perfect.
Give us some context and put a timestamp on that. When was that?
That would have been end of 2014 going into 2015. So at the time, I would say YouTube was still in its infancy, even though it had been around for, I believe, 6 years at that point. People still didn't take YouTubers seriously. They still thought it was some niche platform that wasn't going to catch on. They didn't think people were paying attention to it. And I think most importantly, brands didn't think that it would convert. They didn't see value in YouTube. And Callaway Golf was one of the first ones to really take that step and say, hey, listen, we're willing to put up money. We're willing to advertise on YouTube, and we're willing to do it with this influencer group. And it worked out really well for them to the point where they signed on for multiple videos along the way.
I love that story. For those who are managing a brand right now and thinking about influencer marketing or collaborations with influencers, what do you think, first of all, what do you think we get wrong?
So the main thing that I think brands get wrong as it relates to influencers and content creators is, for some reason, they still don't allow content creators to be creative. They put handcuffs on them and say that you have to talk about our product in this way and you have to show our product this way. And it comes off as inauthentic. I think that's the biggest struggle I have right now with larger companies stepping into influencer marketing for the first time, is they don't understand that the value of working with influencers and content creators is that they completely understand their audience, what they want, and how to communicate with that audience. And so if you're a brand and you're watching or you're thinking about using a content creator, just know that like the best route and the best way to use those content creators is to let them use their own creative. Let them be creative with your brand, and that's what's going to resonate the best.
Get a little bit more specifics for those who don't have experience in the area. I've had the same experience too, both on the client side when I was, collaborating with brands when I was at Universal Pictures, and now on the dark side when I'm doing it for clients, and we're doing it even for this channel. Oftentimes we'll get a script, or the brand will ask us to write a script, right? And then we'll have to send it for various approvals. And you get it back with red marks on it. Well, you've got to say it this way. You can't say it that way. Or no, that's off brand, or this is off brand. So what's your recommendation then? So we just talked sort of about the macro advice, which is let the influencers be who they are, because when you let them be authentic and true to who they are, they understand their channel and their people best. It's going to be the most successful. But how do we do that? Is it completely hands off? Because I know that sounds scary to brands, to let someone else control the narrative of your brand, especially if it's your baby. But how do you do that? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I guess the best negotiation tactic is to say no, and we say no a lot in these conversations. And usually a brand will come with multiple asks, and we'll start by saying no to all of them and then working backwards. I think what we found to be really helpful is when we go to a brand that is new to the space and we start working with them, is we kind of outline the non-negotiable items to work with us. hey guys, here's 4 things that we just don't negotiate on. And one of those is like full creative freedom. Now, when I say full creative freedom, I mean that they can tell us like, hey, here's some things that are important to us and our brand. We don't want you to cross over that line, right? And that's fine. So I think getting guidelines from both sides before a partnership starts is always important. But the creative freedom part is all about authenticity. And that's what these brands need to understand is if you go to a content creator and you're paying them money to just talk about your brand in an inauthentic way, that's how it's going to come off, and thus it's not going to convert. And I think that's also why people have said that influencer marketing doesn't work as well as they had hoped, because they just go into it with the wrong strategy. And I'll just take an example that we work with a lot, which is Honey, and they've worked with a lot of influencers. They worked with a lot of podcasts. They're very hands-off when it comes to overall creative. Now, they have certain things they want the influencers to promote and certain things that they want them to talk about, and that's fine. But in terms of creative within the video, they're very hands-off. I think the same goes with someone like SeatGeek, and you guys have seen this with David Dobrik, is Ian at SeatGeek just kind of lets David do his thing. And they're involved in that content. And I think those are 2 good examples if you're a company looking at influencer marketing and content creators, how you can work together.
Yeah, and speaking of Dobrik, I mean, it's Ian, right? So Ian, they're sort of famous for giving David cars to give away. And I think maybe the perfect metaphor as a way to start at least down this path is the brand really should be riding shotgun, not driving the car. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good saying. I think I agree with that. In some instances, maybe they should be sitting in the back seat and letting the content creator sit up front. But yeah, I agree. They shouldn't have the wheel. They should be there providing value, and that value should be direction. But they should let the content creator really steer.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so from Dude Perfect, then where did you go?
So I worked with Dude Perfect, and I ended up seeing an opportunity to actually run this as my own business. So in late 2015, I ended up meeting a influencer who is quite large on YouTube still to this day, named Typical Gamer. Typical Gamer was then transitioning from Twitch, which was Justin TV, I believe it was Justin TV at the time, over to YouTube. To stream on YouTube, and I started working with him in 2015, and that's when the business started. And so Typical Gamer led into other content creators on YouTube in the Minecraft space, and I really started signing most of the larger Minecraft YouTubers and kind of putting a stranglehold around that. And started learning about Minecraft servers and digital items. And so 2015, 2016 was really the infancy of Night Media, of like me just figuring out the space and understanding where the value was and what content creators I wanted to work with. So those first few years were very important for my personal growth as an entrepreneur, but it was also like important, I think, for the maturity of the space. In 2015, 2016, people still, like I said earlier, saw YouTube as like this little thing on the internet that nobody paid attention to now where if attention is really the main asset that people are seeking, YouTube is at the top of that pyramid.
True. And it's been the bane of my existence too, coming from traditional. When I did, I mean, we were early, granted, 2008, 2009, no one really knew what the potential was. And a lot of Hollywood looked down their nose at YouTube and YouTube creators. This was also a time when YouTube was funding creators. They were giving, $500,000 or $1 million to people like actor Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight on The Office, or, for his company Soul Pancake, or Tony Hawk, who was blowing up on YouTube, or beginning to at the time. It was really, just the beginning of the Wild West. And still, I think, and you can weigh in on this, tell me what you think. I mean, why is there still such a huge delta between the traditional and, call it non-traditional? Why hasn't YouTube been able to figure that out, or Hollywood been able to figure that out, or have they? What do you think?
Well, yeah, thankfully, I think they're all starting to understand it. And I think a good example now is that a traditional media tour for a movie used to be like, let's hit Good Morning America, the Today Show. Let's hit the other night talk shows. Let's hit some media and let's do that. Now it's becoming, let's go on MrBeast channel. Let's go on David Dobrik's channel. Let's play video games with some of these guys on Twitch. And so I think Hollywood's finally understanding that, like, hey guys, the attention is no longer or at least the attention we're seeking is no longer on linear TV. The attention we're seeking is actually on YouTube. And it took a while, I think, for them to transition to that, just because when you think about the people making the decisions, they've done this a certain way for 30, 40, 50 years. It's really hard to change that thinking when it's working. And so I think, for the past decade, doing the talk shows and stuff, it still works, but it's not working as well. And so it's been interesting sitting in my position, seeing, Paramount and Universal and Disney and all these people now reaching out for these movies that are coming out. And they're saying, hey, how can X creator promote this movie? Can he play Minecraft with your creator? So we're seeing a definite shift in how Hollywood is promoting these movies.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And when I was on the client side buying media, so I had a $40 million P&L, and we were assigned movie titles. So at the time I was working on like Meet the Parents with Ben Stiller. I worked on Shrek, the original Shrek animated movie with Mike Myers. Worked on The Grinch, the live action. And we were spending a ton of money. And something I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say, Gary's a buddy of mine, he said traditional media still works, it's just overpriced. And I really agree with that. I think there's a lot of white space and emerging opportunities on places like YouTube and with influencer marketing. And even, they don't have to be MrBeast and have 50 million subs. They can be micro influencers, right? Let's talk about that for a second. What are your thoughts and experience with micro influencers, people with not 50 million subs?
Yeah, so it's something we don't focus on here. We work on, the influencers that have, 10 plus million subscribers. The one thing that I do see a lot of value in micro influencers is the engagement levels are incredibly high at that stage. Whether you have 10,000, 15,000 followers on Instagram or Twitter. The issue with micro influencers has been like, how do you get to scale? Right? Like, how do you spend $5 million across micro influencers without having to negotiate 800 different contracts and then follow along with 800 different deals? So I think right now there still isn't a system that exists for micro influencers or for brands to run like a large scale campaign with micro influencers. I think there's a ton of value in that space. I just, I don't know how far we are away from finding that solution, but I know when that finally does come and it makes it easier for, say, Universal to then plug in to 10,000 micro influencers and run these campaigns, I see a lot of people going that direction.
Yeah, I would put our channel in that category of micro influencer. We have a couple of 100,000 subs. But I asked that question very selfishly because I'm still trying to figure that out. We had a similar opportunity, let's say with a big automotive brand that targets entrepreneurs, because that's sort of our angle. And we couldn't make it work, mainly because the agency of record that we were working with just said, listen, we're doing the Oscars, we're doing the Super Bowl. Yep. And we just don't have the bandwidth to do, something small, and you guys are small. And so that really started me thinking about how to solve that problem, because they were engaged, they were ready to go. They just didn't have the bandwidth to be able to handle it. It was, interest, ready to go, right fit, but just didn't have that in place.
Yeah. They have a $10 million budget, right? And so it's spending, say, for example, like $10,000 or even bigger, right? $100 million budget. So allocating $10,000, now you have a body in that office that needs to be responsible for that. That contract needs to pass through legal. At some point, it's just like not worth the time. And so that's been my opinion on why micro influencer campaigns are getting held up and just aren't happening, is because brands are looking to spend a larger amount of money on these creators. And so they're like, okay, if we're spending, like you said, $100 million, we need to go deploy $100 million because it's going to take us a long time if we do it at $10,000 a clip.
I feel kind of fortunate because I have a foot in each country, right? Like I totally understood the perspective of the CMO, actually it was the account supervisor I talked to via the agency, right? When I was on the client side, I didn't have the bandwidth either. I was basically the brand manager, and all I wanted, and I'm speaking now to other brands and maybe influencers who are thinking about doing this, all I wanted on the client side was a turnkey solution. Like, I'm handling so much, I'm managing so much, like I'm managing the strategy, the advertising plan, the PR, all the other intricate details, the P&L, the finances of it, working with the sales team. I just want a turnkey solution that I can spend the money, tell me what I'm going to get for that money, and then deliver. And it's like, I'm on to 50 other things.
Yep. Yeah, and it probably takes just as much of your bandwidth to run a $10,000 campaign as it does to run a $10 million campaign. And so that's like the give and take with it.
There it is, Reed. There it is. And so that's the new interesting problem for me to try and solve, at least from, my side of the fence now on this side. And as, we were talking off camera, my production company, we are helping brands and celebrities, call them B-level celebrities. We're not talking to, like Brad Pitt or whoever the flavor of the month is, A-level. These are people who, are very successful. They have a ton of budget, but they don't have a whole, entourage attached, and they need support in this area. And so we're trying to figure that out. Interesting stuff. How did you meet Jimmy? Talk about, MrBeast and how that evolved.
Yeah, it's the same way I meet 90% of the people we work with is through Twitter DMs. I do a lot of my networking on Twitter. Most of our clients are done through mutual introductions. And so Jimmy is no different. It was a mutual introduction from a friend. Jimmy had 1.7 million subscribers at the time. And he had just done this pizza video where he bought 100 pizzas and he gave them away to random people. And one of my friends, Jobless Garrett, who also has a large YouTube presence, reached out to me and he was like, hey, I have this friend who I think is at a stage where he could really do something special on YouTube. He doesn't have any help. His mom's helping him with his finances and he has one employee, but he's like, I think it could get out of control pretty quickly. And so Jimmy and I started Twitter DMing back and forth, got on the phone a few times, got to know each other over the course of like 2 to 3 months. And then like the cliche is the rest is history. Now we're at 46 million subscribers. So it's been a crazy 2.5 years. That
deserves a pause. So 2.5 years. And basically, incredible. So you said almost 2 million at the time and now 40 million plus?
46 currently to date. I believe we're at 46. And when I met him, we were at 1.7 to 1.8 million.
So let's break that down. So to what do you attribute that phenomenal success?
I think, so we go down this rabbit hole about like, why is MrBeast successful for a while? I think he does a really good job of shock and awe, of like doing things that other creators can't either financially do or won't physically do, like a 24-hour challenge on the top of a mountain. I think he has a very deep understanding of YouTube's algorithm and why videos are suggested and why they do well. And so a lot of the focus for him over the past 2.5 years has been on titles and thumbnails. So he really understands like how to curate content for YouTube, which I don't think a lot of creators still understand. And they still probably don't even check their creator dashboard to understand what their data means. And so those two things alone put him at a large advantage across every other YouTuber. And the third one, and I think the one that shouldn't be overlooked, is that every time Jimmy made money, he put it right back into the channel. There was no, I'm taking money out of the channel to buy a Lamborghini. It was okay, we signed a $50,000 brand deal. All right, what can we do with that $50,000 for our next video? And that was the philosophy early on. It's like we would take and Honey was a supporter very early on the channel. So we would take a deal from Honey. We'd then, I think one of the first examples was, it was like $40,000 from Honey. And then we went and gave $40,000 to Ninja right when he had blown up. And Ninja was doing a charity live stream, and Jimmy did a video about donating $40,000 to Ninja. And the video probably has like 80 million views now. I'm not really too sure. But at the time, it did so well for him. And then we just doubled down. He's like, okay, another Twitch donation video, go get another sponsor. And it was really like this like venture capital mindset of growing a YouTube business of like, we're investing everything back into the business. I'm not going to take a salary. Let's see how it goes. And those are the three things that set him apart.
Yeah, if I could chime in too, just as an outsider looking in, I also think in many ways, Jimmy is all of us. He is a very unassuming, very approachable, normal dude, right? Mm-hmm. There's no fronting. there's no pretending or putting on airs or like, he's just himself, right?
Yeah.
And I think that makes him, very relatable and also very approachable. Either, as a viewer, like I want to watch what this kid does because he reminds me a lot of me, or, the things that I aspire to. Like, dude, I would love to give the pizza guy a house when he comes to deliver my pizza. I would love to be able to do that, especially if you know that guy just got kicked out of his house or he's got a kid.
I just bought this house and I'm gonna give it to Chandler.
Really?
No, but I am gonna give it to a pizza delivery guy. And here's how. We ordered a pizza. Can I have a pepperoni delivery, please? Then we paid a pizza delivery guy to help us move furniture all day.
We just need help moving furniture. If we were to give you a few $1,000s, could you just help us move furniture all day? Really?
All we told him is that we are YouTubers and we needed an extra hand moving furniture because our friend Chad got laid off and we really wanted to help him. But little does he know, Chad isn't real. And at the end of the day, we would actually give him 100% ownership of the house he is helping us move furniture in. He's going to walk through that door and I'm going to inform him that this is in fact his house. Let's do it. Sorry about that interview. How'd it go?
It was alright.
Yeah.
Was it awkward?
Yes. As you can tell, something's up. We spent so much money on this furniture that we can't even pay you the few $1,000s we promised because we put all the money into your house. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Your house looks nice.
Yeah. What do you think of his house, Jake?
I think it's awesome. I think he's really gonna enjoy it.
What?
This is your what?
Yeah.
Yeah, your house.
Oh, we didn't tell you? This is for you.
Yeah.
We were lying about Chad. This whole house is for you.
Chad doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That is awesome. You are Chad. Thank you.
Yeah, Chad, this is your house.
So we noticed earlier that you had a Monster sticker on your phone. So we got you 100 cans of Monster.
Wow.
And then you said you had a dog, so we bought you a bunch of dog food and some toys for him.
We didn't know which brand, so we just got all of them.
Wow.
We reminded you of your favorite thing,
Pizza.
pizza.
Oh wow, there's more pizza in the stove. Didn't even know that was there.
Did you have any idea all day?
No, I did not.
No, you really didn't?
No.
We were getting kind of worried because Jimmy let it slip a couple of times. He's like, oh yeah.
I really didn't at all. It is awesome.
Oh yeah, we got a couple of extra things too we should show them.
We bought some toys because you mentioned you have a daughter, so we got her some toys too.
Wow.
And I know this must be out of nowhere, so I know it's a lot.
It really is. Like, it's awesome. Yeah.
But it's all yours. Like,
Oh my
this,
God.
this owl, yours. Do what you want with it. You just throw it.
Just throw it.
Yeah, it's yours.
Yeah.
Like the house we were in, it was a horrible house. It was very unsafe, and this house is honestly gonna be a lot better, safer for my kids, and better for our living. We tried to get a house done the day before y'all gave us this house. Honestly, I was going into this thinking I was just getting a couple $1,000s to help move furniture. Someone just gave me a house. Now we can stop worrying about where we're going to go from here. This is really just a great opportunity for me and my family. And I just want to thank you, MrBeast, for honestly answering all our prayers, because this is something amazing for me.
Here we go. This is your brand new
Some of
house.
these stories,
Here is the key.
some of them border on what's the term that I'm looking for? They're like social experiments,
Yeah.
right? And there's an emotional connection and an emotional piece to it where you really get the sense that Jimmy is trying to do good in the world. Like he's trying to make a difference from, the movement with trees or, giving away cars to people who, are walking to work. That's just like, you want to just root for that guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It started out as like, what big ideas can we do? And it slowly transitioned into like feel good, tugging on, heartstrings, like let's change the world. Let's use this platform to do better. Team Trees was, a really good example of that, of raising $22 million in 60 days across the creator community, and Elon Musk getting involved and Jack Dorsey. And then it just spiraled out of control. To that point, no one had viewed a YouTube channel like that. I think most people had just viewed it as a way to get rich. And yeah, you can make a lot of money if you have a successful YouTube channel, or you can do something, that helps the community, You can do something where you're hiring employees and building a bigger business and investing in other people. And so Jimmy just took a different route than most YouTubers to date. And it's been really nice seeing people follow in his footsteps, not only with video creative and copying some of the stuff he's done in the past, but thinking about your YouTube business as an actual business and not just as a channel that you create content on. So it's been really cool to see the last 2.5 years.
Can we talk? I want to talk about the thumbnail game and the title game. Mm-hmm. You are giving me some tips right off the cuff, just scanning my channel. I maybe want to talk to other creators about some of that stuff that you are involved in, or just from your knowledge. But I also want to talk about the CPMs. So Jimmy is getting, or MrBeast is getting an enormous amount of views. Are you guys focused on like CPMs and how to drive that up, or can you share with us like a range of CPMs? Like what? Yeah,
I mean, a typical creator makes anywhere between like, and for the, like, I guess we should first start with like, what's a CPM? Because some people are like, wait, what? So it's basically the amount of money you get paid per 1,000 views on your channel. And so a typical CPM for a new channel will be like in that dollar range. And then it slightly goes up as you grow. And a lot of things depend on like where the CPM goes, right? How many mid-rolls you have in a video. There's such things as auctioned ads, and then there's also reserved ads. And a reserved ad would be like a non-skippable 10 to 15 second ad that you have to watch. And so a lot of how high your CPM is really revolves around those things. And so usually creators in Jimmy's size, 10 million and above, like that CPM is like the $2 to $6 range, depending on the time of year. And it again depends on a lot of those factors.
So are you pushing the buttons behind the scenes with him, or is that Jimmy's team?
Thankfully, I'm not. That would probably, I just don't have the time to do that. So he has a whole team behind the scenes that works on his videos, his ad placements, all that stuff. And so initially he was doing it. He's still incredibly involved. Obviously in the title thumbnail, like that's mostly him. But in terms of like uploading the videos and things like that, like we do have some help.
Yeah. And so are you advising other clients then about some of those particulars? Because I'm curious, You talked about, mid-rolls, and I think YouTube announced maybe just like 30 or 60 days ago that any video over 8 minutes, or was it 9 minutes? Maybe it's 8 minutes.
8 minutes, yeah. That can have a mid-roll on it, yeah. It used to be 10. So videos over 10 minutes could have a mid-roll. And what that means is if you have, in the past, if you had a 9-minute video, you could only run a pre-roll ad. So an ad before the video started. And then you could also, I believe, put an end roll on it. But now they've changed that rule to say that if a video is 8 minutes or greater, you can put mid-rolls on it. So you could have a pre-roll ad, then you could put a mid-roll at 3 minutes, a mid-roll at 6 minutes, right? And so it hasn't been around long enough for us to see like the long-term effect on some channels that make micro content. We don't have a lot of creators that create 8-minute videos. Jimmy's tested it on some of his gaming channels. Preston, another one of our clients, has tested it. We just don't have enough data yet, but it looks like it monetizes just as well as a 10 or 12-minute video with mid-rolls.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like, I want to talk about runtime, and I want to talk about this ad. So, like, do you have a best practices suggestion for other creators about, let's start with runtime. What's the ideal runtime? Because when we started in 2009, everyone told me straight up, Brian, your videos are 30-minute segments. This is ridiculous. No one's going to watch anything longer than 3 minutes. In fact, your video should be 2 minutes, 57 seconds, because 3 minutes is the sweet spot.
I don't know who gave you that advice, but it was terrible advice. No, so you can have as long of videos as you want, as long as the watch time is high. I think a good example of this is Dream, and a lot of people just went, who the hell is Dream? But in like my world, he's one of the biggest gaming creators in the whole space. And so his Minecraft videos are 50 minutes long. But if you look, they all have 25 million views because his watch time or his average view duration is incredibly high. So most people on that 50-minute video are watching a long amount of that. They're not watching 3 to 6 minutes of it. And so I think that there's not an ideal length. I think what people should be focused on is like what length is my video, and then how can I get people to watch 50 to 70% of this on average. So I understand what the guys or whoever told you that saying about a 3-minute video, but if the 3-minute video has terrible AVD and the AVD is only 20 seconds, you're in the same spot, right? So on your 30-minute video, if you're getting people to engage in it for 20 minutes, you win, right? You have a 60 to 70% AVD on that video. I would say for creators starting out, start with shorter videos, make them as highly engaging as possible. Make sure you try and hook people to stay until the end of that video and see how they perform. Keep your eyes on the data of knowing what your AVD of that specific video is. I think a lot of people should test out 8-minute videos. If you can pull a 5-minute retention on an 8-minute video, you're doing a great job. So even your videos, like I said, at 30 minutes, it just all comes down to the average view duration. And then if we talk about ads, because we just talked about CPM, if you're running a mid-roll every 3 minutes and you have a 30-minute video and people are watching 20 minutes on average, now they're consuming more ads throughout that video as opposed to your 3-minute video that only has one pre-roll ad.
Yeah, so that's the follow-up question is there such a thing as too many? You know, like sometimes I'll get an occasional content like, bro, you know, this, like I just uploaded like a 45-minute video with author Seth Godin, who is like the godfather of marketing. And literally, like you'd have to fly out to New York City, buy a plane ticket, an expensive event ticket to sit down and hear him speak, right, for an hour. Or you'd have to sign up for one of his workshops or courses, which is completely legit and amazing. They're just like $4,000. And so the alternative for me is like my value prop is like, I just went out there to New York, or I did something remotely that you can watch in your pajamas and it's free and it's 45 minutes. Like, why are you complaining about a skippable video that happens, you know, once every 5 minutes? So do you have like a best practices for ads and stuff?
Yeah, I think let's just take a 10-minute video. I think standard practices would be you run a mid-roll or you run a pre-roll. You probably put an ad at 3 minutes, an ad at 6 minutes. You could be a little bit more aggressive and put one at 9 minutes on a 10-minute video. I think that's like a good standard practice. I understand that person saying like it's a 45-minute video and now there's like 15 ad inserts. But again, it doesn't.
We put 3, by the way.
What's that?
We put 3 to 5 on a 45.
Oh, yeah. And also it doesn't, just because you insert those mid-rolls, it doesn't mean that those ads are being served to everyone, right? So if I watch your video and you have a mid-roll inserted at 3 minutes and 10 other people watch it, we're not all going to be served an ad at 3 minutes. Yeah. And so it's not like that either. And so for me on your 45-minute video, I probably would have put a mid-roll every 5 minutes, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I'll go back and look at that. You want to guess at what our CPMs are?
Across the channel?
Yeah, like a basic average.
I mean, do you want me to tell people how much money I think your channel makes?
Well, let's start with the CPMs.
Okay. I would say because your business, which is categorized a little higher than, say, gaming, you guys, and I'll just use like RPM, so net CPM, so what you guys take home. I would say your RPM is anywhere from the 8 to 12 range.
Yeah, I think you're pretty good. RPM is a new stat for people who don't know. It's basically, like a net number. But if we're talking about traditional CPMs, which if you don't know, the M is Latin for milli, which is 1,000 cost. It's a traditional advertising metric. And there's a lot of really cool CPM calculators out there on the internet that are free, that are fun to plug in. You know, if I spend this much and I reach that many people, what's the CPM? It's really fun to figure out. If we're just talking traditional CPMs, we're getting sometimes as high as $40 CPM. And I did a video a little while ago where I kind of explained a case study. So I uploaded this video with this author, which I thought was awesome. She was so great and articulate, and it was, I think, really valuable. And nobody watched it. It's just for 12 months, nobody watched it. And then I started I was actually kind of pissed. And so I went into the analytics and I was trying to figure out what happened. And I realized that I had just been in the default categories. I just chose people and blogs, right? Because I figured, well, I'm a people and I'm sort of vlogging about things. And I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm going to change the category because my show is mildly entertaining. I'm going to change it to entertainment and see what happens. And what happened was it went from bad to worse. The CPMs dropped way down. views went down. And then, I sort of was analyzing again what happened. And what happened was we sort of jumped into this giant pool or ocean of like major entertainers. Suddenly we were competing with, Kevin Hart and Casey Neistat and David Dobrik and, all these entertainment channels. And I thought, okay, that's the wrong move. And so finally I adjusted it to education. And while we're at it, why doesn't YouTube have a business category? Is this backwards to you?
I think they do now. I'm gonna have to double check because our podcast, Creator Economics, I believe we put under business and not education, but I'm gonna have to double check after we're done with this.
If that happened, it just happened like this month because I've been noodling the categories, looking at it closely. Anyway, so when I changed it to education, like CPMs went from like $4 up to 12, 20, 30, and then up to 40. And then a funny thing happened to that video. In like the 13th or 14th month, it suddenly caught traction. And that single video, just as one example, we've netted the RPM number, about $27,000 to date, just on that one video. Mm-hmm. So, my message in that case study vid was just to like tell people like, one, don't give up. Like what you're talking about earlier about thumbnails and titles, descriptions, or even, categories can make all the difference between zero or hero. And, we saw a huge jump in the numbers and the revenue. And it also has helped us attract, going back to that other story of the automotive partner, that's how they found us. They're like, oh, we saw this video. And that started to make me think too, like, channels with different kinds of content can attract different kinds of advertisers, Honey and, some of these other advertisers that MrBeast channel is getting is awesome because that's their audience. But like, we're also getting approached by financial, fintech partners and automotive partners. And so it's pretty interesting to think about the possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without question. Most of our creators are categorized in entertainment, gaming, those different verticals. I've just seen business channels over the last few years show their RPMs. Graham Stephan actually showed his on TikTok a few weeks ago. And I think most of the YouTube creators were pretty blown away at how high his RPM was. And yeah, so if you guys have a $40 CPM, that's roughly a $20-ish RPM. So that is incredibly high when the averages are around $3 to $4.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of Graham's channel too. I think he does a great job of being transparent. I think, the way he opens the kimono too is really helpful to other creators. I would love to see more of that. I mean, I think even if like some of your clients were do it to video like that, I think that would be very helpful, at least eye-opening, right?
I think they will. The reason in my opinion, the reason there's not a lot of business creators yet is they're catching up to this YouTube wave. Whereas YouTube really started with vloggers and gamers and like other genres of content. And we're slowly starting to see some of these bigger business personalities, and Gary Vee's a good example. And I'd imagine Gary Vee's pulled a lot of business people into YouTube. It'll continue to happen. I just think it's a little behind because it wasn't something that had started off on YouTube early on.
Yeah. So let's springboard off that question and ask, like, where's the white space? So like, where's the opportunity right now that you're seeing, that you're trying to either find new clients, create new business for your folks? What are we not thinking about?
Yeah, I think there's something new that happens every year. A year and a half ago, I had never thought that customization and arts and crafts was going to be a huge genre on YouTube. And now there's guys like ZHC pulling tens of millions of views per video on customizing Teslas and iPhones and things like that. So that was something that didn't exist to that point. There's a lot of channels in the home renovation space that I've seen blowing up where they're just taking a house and buying it and the channels around the process of renovating that home. There's also channels I've seen where someone is giving you the behind the scenes access to how you can become a farmer, whether that's a milk farm or, someone living in Nebraska. And I've seen some of those channels tick up. So the argument of, hey, YouTube is so oversaturated, it's hard to break through, is just, it's false. And it's false because every single year there's new genres that didn't exist prior that are starting to put different creators on the map. And just a few of the ones that I listed, and ZHC being one of the biggest creators in the space, built on a genre of content that didn't exist 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He was the only one, and he just had been doing it for 5 years and never caught steam. And then people started paying attention. So YouTube's definitely not a place where you just throw videos and it's oversaturated. I don't think that holds a lot of I don't think that holds a lot of truth. And even someone like Eric, who we've seen, and this was the thing, he wanted to hit 1 million subs by the end of this year. I think he's incredibly close, but he's took a little different route in how he's become popular, and he's tried to sneak into Logan Paul's boxing event, and he's just like taken popular events and tried to insert himself. And so it's really interesting every year seeing the different types of creators that kind of propel themselves to the top of the platform. And that's not stopping. I think that'll continue to happen. And business is going to be another one of those that's just going to continue to rise.
Yeah, I think it's a good message. It's something that, people, if you don't know who Seth is, you should check him out. But Seth is, he's like a mentor of mine, and he's become a very good friend. And the one thing that he really taught me was this focus on, avoiding trying to do what everyone else is doing and just, march to the beat of your own drum.
So I know some of your listeners and readers and followers, they didn't pick the shortest route to the most money. They don't want to hack their way to just serving whatever the audience is ready to buy right this minute. They're hoping, demanding, seeking to do something else, to make a change happen. That is what creative work does. It's something human, something generous, something that might not work, that makes a change happen. And it's frustrating because all of the noise around us pushes us to make average stuff for average people, to keep track of likes or friends or other nonsense that makes other people happy, but isn't why we set out to do this in the first place. And then money gets tight, so we start to race to the bottom, which is bad because you might win or come in second. And so it's easy to get stuck. It's easy to invent writer's block. It's easy to feel like you're not appreciated. And so what the practice says is there is a method, an approach, a way to do the work you want to do. There are no guarantees that come with it. It might not change the people you seek to change. It might not earn you $1. It might not get you applause. It might not work. But it will always work better than anything else you could do.
At the same time, he's taught me about this idea of MVP and MVA. So like minimum viable product or minimum viable audience, which is to say, when you're getting started and you look at someone like MrBeast, who's got 50 million subscribers, it's like Mount Everest, right? Like, how will I ever get there? It's impossible, blah, 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 blah. But if you just focus like kind of what you're saying, like, okay, I'm a farmer. I have some IP about farming, and I'm going to bring you into my world that's a subculture and super interesting to a limited number of people. That's great, because the minimum viable audience is just worrying about those people and not everything else, right? And so I think it's a great message that you can really niche down, do what you love to do and what you know a lot about, and grow an audience. How many people do you need? How many subs do you need? The answer to that question is, it depends. Like, what's your goal? Like, is it to, be full-time? Is this just like a side hustle? Is it like to build attention? You're building a business around it. But if you go back to like the minimum of what you need to float your boat, then you won't worry about 50 million subs or the optics. You'll just worry about, delivering value to that audience, growing the community, getting feedback and doing the stuff that they want to do. And kind of bringing it full circle to some of the clients that you mentioned that you manage, seems like that's the common thread is you can tell they're not worried about the optics. They're just real, authentic, core, like entertaining or inspiring, and they're just doing their thing. And we're watching from outside in.
Yeah. And they've also, they've all been doing this for a long time because they all love it. This is like their passion. This is what they want to do in life. Jimmy was making videos since he was 14 years old, before people found out that, hey, there's a MrBeast who's making great content on the internet. So there was a lot of people just not watching early on, and he just loved it. So I think the one thing that I struggle with is a lot of people are seeing how much money's being made, and they're starting to do this and starting to make YouTube videos because they think they can get rich. And if you're entering this space thinking that you can get rich, you might as well leave now, because the guys that you're competing against and the girls you're competing against have a profound love for content creation and making videos, and they will not only outwork you, they will outsmart you. And so I really hope that a lot of people aren't getting in this just because they can get rich.
I love that too. And I co-sign that 1,000%. I mean, if you're trying to get rich or trying to get famous, you're doing it wrong. You should try and do it because you love the work, but also to be respected or to deliver value, right? Like, it could be entertainment, or in our case, our channel. I mean, it really started, my minimum viable audience, Reed, was one. It was me. Like, I needed to figure out how to be successful. So I produced it very selfishly through my eyes, and like me being the only one who needed the info. And then it turned out that there's a lot of people who were in the same boat as me and wanted to know from Mark Cuban or from Reed or someone else, like how you built this, right? How you do it, how you became successful, the secrets to success. All right, sort of like we're at the goal line here, about to take the ball over get a touchdown. What mistakes have you made? And I ask that because a lot of people will say, failure is not an option, but it's got to be in order to find success. You have to fail in order to figure it out. So what have you learned?
Yeah, I've probably failed more early on than I would have liked to, but I think the most important thing is I learned from all those failures. I started out in this industry by cold calling, and that doesn't even exist anymore because everyone just sends emails. But my start into this industry was picking up a phone, dialing that phone, and trying to sell and have a conversation with the person on the other line. So it was a lot more difficult. So I had a lot of failures early on. I think taking no's every day, like you make 100 phone calls and you get 100 no's, really probably affected me early on. And then I started to just shrug it off and was like, you know what, I'm eventually going to get a yes. I just have to go through 1,000 no's. So I kind of took that mindset of like, all right, as soon as I get 1,000 no's, I'm eventually going to get a yes. So that was like me kind of getting used to failure early on. I don't know if that was a good thing or that was a bad thing, but it helps me now because no's don't really affect me as much. I think the other failure, I wouldn't even say this was a failure, but early on with this company, I thought that it was all about scale. Like my business had to represent tens of thousands of creators and I needed to sign everyone. And I soon realized that like, okay, life's too short for me to have to like chase 100 kids around. So I'm going to focus on the ones that I have personal faith in, that I get along with, and I'm going to go incredibly deep with them in their business. And that's actually been one of the biggest things and one of the biggest pivots that's made Night Media successful, is not trying to scale like some of these big talent management firms that represent tens of thousands of people. We're not Nike, we're not Adidas, we're like trying to be supreme of talent management. We're really calculated in who we represent, and we're very thorough in the type of creator that we look for. And so that was like one thing that I learned, and I wouldn't even call that a failure. It was more of like a trial by fire. That I learned early on. So those are two things I think that really stand out to me and the growth of Night Media. And then the last one has to do with hiring. I think hiring is something that, I thought was going to be easy, that I was just like, oh, I'm just going to hire this person. It'll be great. I learned the hard way that like, it's all about not only hiring the right people and getting the right people on the bus, but then it's like how you bring those people into the culture of the company and how you accelerate their careers and keep them fulfilled. And so I learned that one the hard way as well. And so those are like the three things that I would say stood out for me in Night Media early on.
Yeah. Let me just underscore what you said. It's super important. Getting past, the rejection is a big deal. And I think you said it very well. Sometimes no in professional language is just no for now, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing that some of those people that turned you down the first time, now that you have a little bit more of a name or success, I'll bet one or two of them have tried to come back. I don't know if you have. Let's talk about that.
I have plenty of stories. Yeah, I think one of the most interesting stories, and I haven't told this one a lot, is early on when I was trying to become a sports agent. My philosophy was that, okay, I'm not just going to like pick up the phone, or I'm not just going to email my resume. I'm actually going to like show up and try and get a face-to-face. Whether that was a good idea or a bad idea, who knows? But I would show up at these offices and sit in the lobby and be like, yeah, I'm waiting for so-and-so. I don't have a meeting. I just want to get a face-to-face. And I ended up walking into Lee Steinberg's office, who, for those who don't know, he's like one of the biggest names in the sports agent world. And the movie Jerry Maguire was solely, I think, kind of based on him, or he helped with the movie in some way. And I was in his lobby, and an intern came out and was like, sir, you got to leave. Like, you don't have a meeting. And I was like, listen, I only need like 2 minutes. I just want to like hand deliver my resume. I'm from North Dakota. I'm here in LA for a week. And he's like, no, you got to get out of here. And so I got kicked out. Fast forward 2.5 years later, I get a call from a former teammate of mine named Carson Wentz. I had played at North Dakota State. Carson Wentz, for those of you who know, played at North Dakota State and was set to be either the number 1 or the number 2 draft or pick in the NFL draft. And his father called me and he said, hey, Reed, it's down to 3 agents. We'd love your expertise because we know that you were in this world for a little while. And he listed the agents, and it was like Todd France, Ryan Tolner, and Lee Steinberg. And just to back up, that very same day that I got kicked out of Lee Steinberg's office, I went south to Rep 1 Sports office, which was Ryan Tolner. Nobody was in there. There was someone like cleaning up some boxes, and he couldn't have been nicer. Took my resume and he's like, hey, I'm going to set it on Ryan's desk. Like, I don't know if anything will happen out of it, but we'll see. Ryan sends me an email a day later and he was like, hey, sorry I wasn't in. Totally appreciate you coming in. Love the hustle. We don't have anything right now, but we're definitely going to keep your name on file. And so it all just kind of came full circle of like, okay, Ryan Tolner couldn't have been nicer to me. Lee Steinberg wouldn't even give me the time of day. And now I'm in a position to be like, hey, who do I think the potential number 1 draft pick should pick for an agent? I ended up basically giving him the pros and cons of all of them, and they ended up picking Ryan Tolner. But it's just like one of the stories that kind of came full circle in my life.
I love that. I love that so much. Probably for the wrong reason, but I love that.
Yeah. So it's and I think I've told that story one other time, but
oh, it's gold. Let me dig a little bit further. So, what is your philosophy on holding a grudge? I mean, it's sort of saying it to the extreme, I guess. But like, what if one of those people from back in the day who blew you off came back and said, hey, we want to do a deal now with one of your guys? Would you be quick to like forget that and forgive them? Or is that going to be like what comes around goes around?
I think it depends on the situation. I think for most part, or for most things, I'm like pretty quick to forget. But it also like some things hang in the back of my mind because I'm so ultra competitive. But if it's like a brand that was like, and there's multiple examples of brands saying, no, we would never do this, not right for us, that finally came back. I think the movie studios are good examples. Like they used to tell me no all the time. Why would we advertise on YouTube? Why would we pay this creator? And now they're all reaching out and they're like, hey, we want to like do media tours. We want to be on your channels. And we kind of opened our arms and, been like, okay, great. Like, let us educate you on how we think you should do this. So most of those examples, like when they are finally ready, I'm here to educate and help them get involved. But there's certain situations like where people probably blew me off early on in my career where I don't have a grudge against them, but I'm so ultra competitive, that I just want to like be as successful as I can. And so that's like probably a good example, is like the Lee Steinberg situation.
Yeah. So the message here is, the nobodies of today are the somebodies of tomorrow. Be careful.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man,